Can I ask you, was there any consideration in the filming in your first 35 days, knowing that the strike might happen, where you wanted to shoot scenes that had VFX so you could get those done? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course I do. That would have been smarter than I am. That would have been so savvy.
Use your brain! Use your brain! Use your brain! The thing in your head, use it!
I know I have to wrap with you, but I'm going to do one follow-up on Deadpool because people don't know much about it. Can you tease anything about the movie in terms of what it's about?
I'll just say that it very much leans into the fact that this one is Deadpool and Wolverine.
Well, no shit.
This one is much more of a two-hander.
Oh, pause.
It's still, as I've told you, raw. The movie itself leans into that gift of having Deadpool and Wolverine co-starring in a movie for the first time.
So now that everyone's starting to take Deadpool 3's balls out of their mouth, I thought it'd be fun to talk about a phenomenon that has plagued the MCU for quite a while now. It's called the Fat Elvis effect. Now I'm certainly not the first to point this out, but I'll quickly explain the general idea. In case you haven't heard of this Elvis guy, he was a cultural hurricane that took the world by storm in the 50s, and dramatically changed the landscape of contemporary entertainment forever. He had moderate success with a long string of movies in the 60s, but was slowly losing interest with the general public, as the British invasion and youth counterculture massively overshadowed him. It wasn't until his '68 comeback special that Elvis was finally back in the public eye. He had several top Billboard hits and enjoyed a very successful residency in Vegas. But as the 70s progressed, it was clear something was very different about this new Elvis. While he was a revered figure who was looked up to as an inspiration by many musicians, as a performer it seemed he just couldn't reach the heights of his glory years. He couldn't move the same, was slurring his words, and even though the passion was still there, the creativity in the music seemed to be faltering. This all culminated in Elvis's tragic passing, which capped off possibly the greatest musical legacy in history. But what does any of this have to do with the MCU, you might ask? Well, to try not to botch this stretched analogy, let's plot the MCU from its inception to its current life into the Elvis history. After the release of Iron Man and the subsequent phases 1 through 3, Marvel had brought previously niche superheroes and actors and made them household names, similar to what Elvis had done with gospel and blues music. We can say that COVID was basically Elvis going into the military, which marked a very dramatic shift in Marvel content as well. Marvel then goes through its own 60s flatline with Part 1 of Phase 4, giving us Black Widow, Shang-Chi, and Eternals. Then Marvel's '68 comeback special, otherwise known as No Way Home, revitalized interest in Marvel at a much needed time. But this was only a temporary oasis, as the next slot of releases proved to drag the bar down to previously untouched depths. Such piles of manure included Multiverse of Madness, Love and Thunder, Wakanda Forever, Quantumania, and The Marvels. And you might be thinking to yourself, Codex, you forgot Guardians 3. Why yes. Yes I did. And this isn't even mentioning the absolute insanity of Disney Plus releases, with plotlines so convoluted they make the Peloponnesian War look like a drunken bar fight. But in any case, all this has been capped off by the long-anticipated and highly acclaimed Deadpool and Wolverine. Many people will say that this is another No Way Home. The Marvel has been totally revitalized and found the energy and passion that made it popular to begin with.
Wrong!
Looking at the basic framework of both films, they seem very similar, bringing back fan-favorite characters and actors, incorporating themes of redemption and sacrifice, and of course using the multiverse in a simplified way that makes it easier for most normies to follow. But unfortunately, this is not the reality. Truth is, behind all the jokes and gore and fan service, what you find is a very poorly and lazily written script that not only insults its audience's intelligence, but either shits on or ignores the carefully built lore of its predecessors. So why is it being so casually accepted as a great movie? Well, the most common thing I've heard about this movie is that it's fun. It's a fun, enjoyable movie that will keep you distracted for a few hours. I mean, fair enough if that's all you want, but wouldn't it be so much better if the movie was so great, so well written, that you'd be watching it for the rest of your life? Sitting down with your kid and saying, yeah, I was there when Deadpool and Wolverine came out, but who's actually gonna rewatch this shit? That said, I'm not totally surprised by the general reaction to this movie. Over the years, I've seen many people lose interest in the MCU and in Star Wars, but still call shows like Kenobi and Loki okay to good. It all comes from a significant lack of understanding of what the MCU has become. Like, do you think the average consumer of a Marvel movie knows that the multiverse is being run by Loki taking a shit in a giant tree? Or that a giant godhead is just sitting there in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? Or that Maz Kanata still hasn't explained how she got Luke's lightsaber? All these questions and more have gone unanswered for years, and I think people just don't care anymore. Not enough effort was put in to make it interesting or plausible. So why wasn't more thought and care put into these scripts? Well, I think this Fat Elvis effect has a lot to do with it. I explained Elvis's basic story in the beginning, but that journey is not exclusive to him. Generally, when people are in their teens to late 20s, they are at their most creative and passionate. They are willing to be experimental and take risks. However, as they get older, that drive to create and make an impression slowly fades away as they begin to reflect on their lives. Some people have families who depend on them, some have achieved a large amount of wealth and fortune, some have found happiness in a simpler or quieter lifestyle. Whatever it may be, the point is that every creative force has a peak, and sooner or later they must accept that their glory days are behind them. In Marvel's case, it seems that they really let all the success get to their head, thinking that anything they released would be solid gold. I remember a couple years back seeing that big slate of like 20 or 30 projects for Phase 4 and thinking, wow, we're gonna be eating good for a while, aren't we? Oh, what a sweet summer child was I. Ignoring the fact that the production side of these projects would have needed way more time and attention than what was given. Just more time to plan out where the overarching story was going would have been nice. Just making it up as you go along is something only really talented writers can pull off, and even then they probably wouldn't advise it. But unfortunately, talented writers was not what we were given. In fact, we might have been scraping at the bottom of the barrel with some of these people. It's like the board of directors at Marvel had a giant roulette wheel with all the names of their friends and family, and were like, okay, Timothy, you're gonna write Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And then Timothy was like, Winter Soldier, it's, oh yeah, he's friends with that, fascist pig, Captain America, right? And then the board were like, yeah, that sounds about right, so, now let's talk about green people twerking. Another aspect for Marvel's downfall is a significant misunderstanding of why it was popular in the first place. Why did a movie like Iron Man have such mass appeal, but something like, say, not have such good reception? Well, as famously said by a great titan of intellectual thought,
you might not have even noticed, but your brain did.
In this case, what I mean is that even with dazzling images, quippy one-liners, and fast-paced action, people can feel, whether it's subconscious or not, whether a story is really putting in the effort. People know when their time is being wasted or when their intelligence is being insulted. Over time, this has led to more and more people deciding that following Marvel just isn't worth it anymore. Because what's the value in trying to keep track of a universe that doesn't even respect itself, respect its own lore or history? Marvel forgot that under the suit of cheap thrills, there was always a core, which was engaging and interesting storytelling. Now this problem certainly isn't limited to Marvel, but it might be the most prevalent, as after Endgame Marvel was the most successful franchise in the world, and after only a few years has been reduced to pretty much nothing. Well, nothing until Deadpool and Wolverine. I've never been of the perspective that success equals good. I mean, Paul Blart 2 made money for God's sake. But what particularly irritates me about this movie is that people have been using its success to dismiss anything negative people have to say about it. But well, everyone liked it and had fun, so why you gotta be a Debbie Downer? Well, maybe because I want a movie that's substantive and well made. Is that really too much to ask for? Sure, the first couple weeks had great energy, and the movie made a ton of money. But even now, less than 2 months after it came out, it feels like everyone's already forgotten about it. Its lifespan didn't seem much longer than most other Phase 4 and 5 projects that people thought were bad. So in the end, it did nothing. It didn't save the MCU, it didn't save superhero movies. It was just another fart in the wind that tricked a lot of dumb people and disappointed a few tired ones. And to be clear, the MCU isn't Prime Elvis or even Fat Elvis anymore. It's that dirty hobo impersonator smoking on the side of the road, trying to cheaply capture the magic that once was. But he never will. And at this point, I think we'd all just be happy if he packed up and went home.